This is episode 254 of the Focused Mindset podcast. I'm your host, Cher, and we have a lot to talk about today. I feel a little rusty because it's been a while since I've hopped on here and I've missed you. I appreciate those of you that reached out and gave me a little nudge. And I have so many notes that it was very difficult for me to narrow down what I wanted to talk about today. But then I thought about a question that actually came up in my mind when I was listening to the Solution Focused Possibilities podcast. They posed the question, what do you do in your second solution focused counseling session? What do you do in the second session? And the hosts had a rich conversation about the fact that the solution focused approach in general is one that completely goes through to fidelity, what you should do, specifically, usually talking about the first meeting. Now, that first meeting is basically a template for every meeting. But for that second meeting, one of the hosts, Sophie, was talking about that she was basically just saying what I just said, that there's not a lot of teaching that specifically, deliberately talks about what you should do on the second session. And she was giving a really good argument as to why that would be important to focus on that. And it got me thinking, well, what do I do, right? What do I do when I get together with someone the second time? Many times in this podcast, we talk about conversation skills and being able to use the solution focused approach to do better in even those most impromptu conversations that you know can really make an impact. That you need to be able to step back and let the other person lead and stand a little bit in the background. But also, if you do it in the right way, asking the right questions, you're allowing them to come up with the insights that can change their whole life. Okay. Now, that does not take away from the professional practice of solution focused that we do as practitioners. It's quite an art. It takes a long time to learn completely. And when I did a follow-up meeting with a group of counselors that I did a training for earlier this year, they brought up to me many questions about how do we continue? You know, we used your tips and we tried it out, as they say. And then some of them kind of told me that they would slip back into doing another approach. And they too were asking questions about how do we continue? And I think that's because when we learn steps of how to do something, our mind first needs to wrap our mind around those steps, get it really clear. And we have to do the practicing phase where it's not really exactly fully natural. It's not something that's secondhand yet. It's just kind of so deliberate that we can't get out of our own head because we have to think about the next step and think about the next question. And that's why I have made a little sheet that I give out in all of my trainings that help you I really look at it as a way to train your mind, not something that you should be like, okay, I'm going to take this out and follow the solution focused approach. It's more to help you stay on track. And if you do get stopped up, you can look down and it has some cheat sheets of the questions that you can ask. And the more you do it, the more you begin to read the other person, and you can have it very authentically and seamlessly, right? But the trouble is that in our mind, when we're first learning something, it's a very cognitive experience. I refer to like it driving a car. Every time I taught all three of my daughters, which was terrifying every time, they are learning. So every single pushing of the brake, how far do I have to push the brake? How soon do I have to push the brake? How far do I have to be away from the car? Many times they're driving slower than they need to or accidentally faster. And everything they do is a experience in such a way that they can't do it naturally yet. So if we just stay there, then we never get to the place that we get when we're just driving our car, having conversations, listening to music, and it just seems like secondhand. I want you to be able to get there to where it feels like secondhand, because when you get there, it feels so incredible to be able to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are going to be locked in with the person you're talking to in a way that maybe they never get in their life, where you are going to give them the confidence to be able to speak for themselves, talk for themselves, and that you're also so confident in your own ability to lead from the background. It's like you're leading, but they're leading, but you're in the background actually doing way more than they thought. You think about a play couldn't go off without the director that's behind the scenes, but the person that's leading that is it the director or is it the actor? The director is doing their part, but the actor is the one that's on stage, the one that's getting highlighted. And having solution focused conversations can be much the same way. Going back to what sparked me to do this episode is, what do we do the second time? Could it be that sometimes we accidentally do a really good job of that first session because we've learned those skills to do the first session, and we forget that needs to continue, and then we meet with them and we have such a strong connection the second time we meet with them, and we just fumble it and go back to old ways of asking questions and, hey, give me an update. What's going on in your life? Really, let's celebrate that. And we might even feel really good about that second session. And if we sit back and really think about it, we didn't use a solution focused approach at all. The problem is that doing this method to fidelity is important to get the results of doing it completely and totally. And so we need to revisit how we do the approach and continue it with the second session and the third session. The trouble that they were bringing up in the podcast Solution Focused Possibilities is that there's not a lot of focused and deliberate training on the second session. And I think that it's because they feel as though once you get it within you and you know how to do it, like driving a car, you do the same thing. It's just going to a different place. Just like when you go in the car, what do you need to learn all of that again? Okay, now we're in the car the second time and I've learned it. How do I drive this time? It's just the way that you did before. It's just you're going to a different location. You're going to a new place. You're going to be making new turns. You're going to be using more or less gas. It's going to take a different time. All of those outside forces change, but the mechanics of how you do it remain the same. And I know, especially from meeting with this group that I had trained and the questions that they had, that they quote unquote tried it out. And then some of them just kind of went back to other ways. And then they're like, I think I need to try it out again. And the director of the training was being like, this is our practice. We need to do it to fidelity. And they have, those of you that are in it, you were in my meeting with me, that your director was saying, you need to actually do this documented. We want to see it documented that you're doing this. And when that happens and you're under a certain expectation, maybe you're like, I have to do it step by step by step. But don't forget that doing the solution focus to fidelity means that you are trying to make it like driving the car, that it's so simple and also difficult and challenging because it takes skill. But that's why I provide the 3 things that can stay in our mind at all times to keep us on track, to use all of the wonderful tools of solution focus and all of the wonderful questions that guide someone towards their insights and their ability to make changes in their life. The first step is gather. I want to gather their thoughts. I want to gather it up without any judgment, without any putting myself in this. I don't want to be in it. I want them to be in the ability to share with me. And second is the planning phase, but you're not doing the planning. This is the co-constructing, when you're asking questions that's going to help them have revelations that they need and lead the conversation where it needs to go through the deliberate questions that you've asked. Many times in the planning phase, it's a deep conversation rooted in the miracle question. If you woke up and this situation was completely different, what would you imagine that would look like? And you walk through it, and then you pull from what they just said to say, oh, so what would happen if you did more of this and more of that? And that planning phase begins to then help them to move to the start. And the start allows you, once you see that, you see the insight, you see that they want to change, say, what right now are you thinking that you can do to make some of these things happen? What's the first thing that you'd like to do when you leave here? What's something that can move you closer to that? And challenging them to answer that question for themselves. And then they can do just that. It's a beautiful there, and we're not going to go into every single one of the therapeutic steps of how you do that today. Though we are going to talk a lot about how I use the scaling question. That process, as a reminder, using the solution focused approach, if you lets your mind start getting used to that type of counseling. And what that type of counseling doesn't have is a need for a lot of worksheets, a need for a little downloaded program or anything like that. I will tell you something, to be completely honest. I know my school district has all the resources and they've bought curriculums, but I have not used worksheets in my counseling for years. And when I had an intern, I noticed that she did want to. She really was excited about making material from, say, Canva, or bringing up stuff that she's seen. I'm not against that, like, use it, especially when you're brand new. Sometimes that helps to be able to help you to stay on track. Even these whole lesson plans that we make for small group, I have found that my most productive small groups is when I use the solution focused, and then I take it deeper in the second one. I take it steps further in the next one. And we have a beginning and ending that they are giving themselves a scaling grade, and they're allowing me to see what they need in each one, and really allowing them to go out and practice in real life and then come back and report it to me, because we know that change doesn't happen because of a conversation we have. It happens because they go out and they do something different and they try new things, and it begins to rewire their mind. So going back to, what do we do the second time? In order for me to talk to you about what I do with a student, or a client, a counseling client, a coaching client, the second time we meet, it's good that we talk about what I've been doing this last year and playing with about the first time we meet. I came up with this way of doing an intake that I've done quite frequently, and I actually talked about it on stage a few times already, because it's been so cool. Where I think of I think of 4 chambers of their life, and when they come in, I say, I really just want to take a few minutes to get to know you. I'm really looking forward to finding out about you. And then I have a unique way of doing that, if that's okay with you. I take out a piece of paper and I write 4. I put it in 4. So I just write a X in the middle of it. So now we have 4 chambers. And I say, what are 4 areas of your life that mean the most to you? They're like, what do you mean 4 areas? And I'm thinking, family, school, some people, the most important thing to them is the time they spend. You might break this up into time where you spend, or just areas of people you hang out with, just 4 areas of your life. And I'll tell you what, they pick up on it. And they might say, for the sake of this, we'll say that they say friends. They say, one area of my life is friends. One area of my life is my relationship with my family. One is when I'm at school, and one is when I'm doing my sport. All right. So we'll say those 4. Who knows what it is? They get to choose. It's on them. And then I say, we're just going to do something real fast. On a scale of 1 to 10, with these 4 things that are important to you in your life, I want you to give it a score of 1 to 10, with 10 being it's going exactly as close to perfect. It just feels incredible within you, and that's a 10. It's going really well. And 1 being that it's just a struggle. It's a huge struggle for you. And then I go through all 4 of those areas. Where would you score yourself right now with your friends? And they might say an 8. What would you score yourself in family? Maybe a 5. I hope I remember this later for this analogy. I'm gonna write it down. For school life, let's say they say, school is about a 4, and my sport, that is a 9. Okay. So if they do that and they've scaled, there's one of two things that I do from there. One thing is I just kind of look at it and say, interesting. And I just kind of, they look at it too, because that visual is so interesting. And they just kind of like say nothing and look at it and nod. And this is such a great thing, the silence, using silence in your favor. Because I cannot believe how often when I'm just looking and I'm pondering and I'm nodding that they say, I was just thinking about this area here. And they start to actually tell me the area that they'd like to work on. And I am more than happy to move in that direction. Sometimes I say, oh, that is so interesting. We're going to get back to that later, but I just set it aside. Most of the time when I set it aside, it's because there's a referral in front of me and I know exactly why I'm talking to this student. And I'm about to ask a question of saying, we're here today to talk about the situation with whatever. And if that situation wasn't bothering you anymore, what would you be doing? Or, I kind of like move in a direction, or what is your hope? What's your best hope for this conversation is basically where I'm heading off from there. What's your best hopes for this conversation today? And in that case, that's just sitting aside with their numbers on it, doing nothing. Now, there's other times when that tool becomes an entire session, because I can use the skills that we've learned on scaling to say, oh, I noticed, and I choose an area and we talk about that area. Now, what area do you think that I choose? They're expecting me to choose the lowest one, right? Because that's what people always do. Let's talk about what's not going well, but not this solution-focused counselor. No, I'm going to say, oh my goodness, I noticed that your sport is at a 9. What have you been doing to make that so darn high? That's amazing. What's been going so well to make that go a 9? And we began to make a list. Oh, and when you do argue with a teammate, what are you doing to help it go smoothly, so you guys don't keep arguing? Or, just, it's not only about their sport, but maybe I'm asking about their relationships, right, within their sport. And how are you doing that? How is your relationship with your coach? What is going well about that? And we're making, now you see, those of you that know the solution focused approach, you see what I am doing, right? I am building their capacity to see what they can do in that realm that goes well, right? Now, their mind can make the change very quickly to understand that these are skills that they have, and they can use those skills in other parts of their life, right? So it depends on how much time you have and how many sessions you're going to have. The great thing about the solution focused approach is you can pick it up in other sessions. Some people think that I have to go through all of it. I have to go through every single bit of the solution focused approach and then launch them off with that. But if you are truly determining your actions based on the other person, then you're going to be taking those pauses and watching the tone of where they're going and what they're saying without saying it, and let that continue to lead you. If it's going really well, talking about what they're doing well, then you're going to say, I wonder if you use some of these skills. I see that you have these skills. And then you name the skills that and they just said that they're doing, and say, I bet you could use those skills in other parts of your life. What other parts of your life do you think need these skills? Need a little bit of the person that you're showing up as, the version of yourself that you are in your sport. Where else in your life needs that person? And maybe I'll allude to what our little chart, the 4 chambers, and they'll look at it and I'll look at it and they'll point to another one. Well, I think maybe I can use it in my family life. How might you do that, do you think? Well, I guess I could do this more. I could do that more. I could try this. And that's where you can end that session. That sounds like an incredible idea. What's the first thing that you'll notice when that type of thing happens? And let's see what happens when we get back together. This is just one example of how this has gone for me. It is very important that you don't impose your direction upon the person you're talking to, right? So in the first session, that seems really easy for most solution focused counselors because it's so clear what you're meant to do, that maybe you ask that miracle question, then you bring out those things and then you see how they can do it in their life. You move on. You move forward, I should say. Not so easy with the second one because you might be like, I'm extremely curious. Sometimes we're very curious when we get back together with them to find out what their update is. Like it comes into our mind when we meet with them. We're like, oh, I remember they shared certain things that I just really would love to know more about. And I want to dive deeper into that. If that ever happens, then you're in danger of slipping out of the solution focused approach and having a conversation that's, great because you're great, but might have had a chance to be greater if you stuck with the solution focused approach. And so those are the times when you want to be curious about where the direction they want to go in the conversation more than you're curious about their update or what is happening, what's come of everything that you've talked about. And that's a mindset shift that's super duper important because then it will allow you to be at rest and not be so curious to find out, like, let's pick up where we left off. A lot of solution focused counselors don't want to pick up where they left off at all, in danger that they're going to do that because they're worried that they're going to be like, okay, this is a checkup. How have you been doing? Like they're being graded on something, which is ew to anybody, like to the solution focused people. That's like, no, we don't do that at all. And so they really, really, really like say, no, we're not revisiting what they talked about, to the point of, I think, ignoring that maybe they are truly excited to talk to you about it. Sometimes just by saying, hey, what's been going well, what's been good, they automatically start to tell you about those great things because this approach they've been working on, they've been putting their energy into it while they're not with you, and they're so excited. But other times they really are eager to talk to you about something that still they might give a little bit of a low score in their mind, but they want to have another conversation with you, just like the first one, that could give them that same empowering feeling. How do you know that if you don't remain curious about the direction that they want to go rather than the information that you already know about them and what you want? So what do I do in the second session when I've used this type of intake? It is so great when I just pull out this sheet and I say, here's the sheet that we used last time. And they take a look at it. And I say, the 4 areas of your life I remember that you told me that's important to you are friends and family. And you talked about your school life. You talked about your sport. And I see that the scores that you gave you on a scale of 1 to 10, now that we're sitting here today and a week or so have gone by, is there any score that you would like to change that you think would be adjusted? Maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower on a scale of 1 to 10. Let's just quickly go through them. How are we doing in your friend's life, with your family, with your school, with your sport? And then you have so many different ways you can go, because you're going to watch them and listen and see what areas they spend a little more time on when they do give their score. And they say, I would give it a 9 because da 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 da, and they seem excited about that. You're like, we're going to get back to that. Or they seem a little distressed about one where you're like, it's time for us to talk about that. And you're just really in tune with them during that short revisit of the same intake. But now they're beginning to see there's a change, that there's always a change. There's a change in where they're at. They are beginning to change. And you acknowledge that, how you're making changes in your life. You're moving forward. You're doing things. Or, oh, I see this one's lower. Is that something you'd like to talk more about today? And they might say, absolutely. It's been a real mess for me. Let's say that they say their family, it was a 5, and now you're going to give it a 3. You don't necessarily have to go to the school one that's a 4 and say, you were a 4 last time. Let's start there. No, you let them decide whether it's the highest, the medium, the low, whichever one they want to start with. You just kind of lead them and say, I'm wondering, is this the area that you want to focus on today? It gives them such a wonderful, oh gosh, they just have ownership, which is beautiful. And it takes the pressure off of you, man. It just releases the curiosity where you're the type of curiosity that's dangerous, where you're like, I need to figure this out. I need to figure this out. And now all of a sudden you're moving from a solution focused therapist to in your head, which direction do I go? Which question do I ask? It's no. Take a breath and let them, let them lead. It's so cool because sometimes after they do even grade and they give maybe similar scores, I can even revisit their first scores. It gives you so many different options. For instance, you might start by saying, I remember all the amazing things you told me about your sport. And I've been so curious to find out if you been able to do some of those things over here in your school life. And if they're like, no, I haven't even done that at all. Well, let's talk about if you did. These are the skills. If you did, what would be different about your home life right now? I mean, your school life right now. Now think about it. You still don't know any actual details. They're not wasting. It's not a waste. I know sharing is not a waste. Don't get me wrong, but they're not taking valuable minutes of you guys' time together, digging into the nitty gritty details of then they said this and she said that. And, if we're talking about school, maybe it's like, and the teacher hates me because then they said this. And what am I supposed to do? I can't do my homework. And it becomes like a complaining fest. It becomes like they're kind of like venting to you. And venting can have its place, but I try really hard in my counseling and coaching to steer things away from venting because it's less productive, right? And this second session plan changes that, because then you're automatically putting them in a headspace of growth in the fact that you're not making them wrong for having a lower score in any one area as far as scaling, and you're rather finding out what could go well. You might even say, oh my goodness, you went up 1 point in that lowest score from last week. How did you do that? Can you tell me more about what you needed to do to make that happen in the last week? Can you share with me how maybe someone reacted differently to that and what happened within you when that happened, right? That deep reflection that's also proactive, honoring them, honoring their autonomy and their ability to do hard things, but also, what does it do? It opens up their mind to saying, I can do this and I can do more than I'm thinking. And more than that, not only am I already doing things that are going well, but I can keep doing things and I can do things in other areas of my life. I am telling you that makes a second session that has been so awesome for me. And I didn't necessarily fully put that together until I heard that most recent podcast. That's why I was like, I have to talk about this, because it has made my second session almost like I so much look forward to it, because I can very, very easily and seamlessly move into a conversation that's focused on their growth. And that's what we need to do. We need to do that more often. It is, oh my goodness, it's a push and pull within you, especially if you're a talkative person like I am, to just take control of a conversation and not even realize it happens to me all the time. And sometimes it was necessary. It was like, well, that was kind of the role that I needed to play in that conversation. But it takes so much more discipline. It takes so much more of being deliberate. It takes a level of self-control and also kindness, really, to allow another person to speak for themselves, talk for themselves, and come up with their own ideas. So that's what I would like you to be able to do more of. And feel free to reach out and tell me all about it. And this also made me think a whole bunch about how AI. How are we going all the way over to AI? Well, I'll tell you about how people ask questions to AI and it gives them answers. And then sometimes it stops them from kind of like really going to a person and talking to them about it. And in the next episode, we're going to talk more about that, of how following this process of being a counselor that's fully engaged and fully listening and being solution focused allows a person to need that personal interaction. And there's a bunch of things I have in my mind to talk to you about that. So that we'll have to save that for next time. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for the people that reached out and wondered why I hadn't been talking so much. I'll tell you, there was a lot of things that were standing in the way. And I will say, just fully transparently, that I had to make a conscious effort of what I was going to prioritize. And some of the things I needed to prioritize and put at the forefront. And I didn't want to do it, but it kind of was like, I need to do that. And it ended up that this podcast got pushed and we have some time lapsing. Sometimes we need to do that self-check for ourselves. We need to sit down with those 4 chambers and we need to say, what's happening in our life right now? What is the thing that I need to do right now? Pat Flynn calls that just-in-time learning, how there's something we need to do that you're just in time to do, but you don't want to miss it. And sometimes by doing that same check that I do with the students, with ourselves, and when I do it with my coaching clients, those moments are things that we can coach ourselves on as well. We can, where am I at in these 4 areas? Is there something I need to put energy into? For me, it was partly the ramp application that I'm going to be putting in October. It needed a lot of attention, but it was also a whole bunch of other amazing and cool opportunities that came my way that was new. And like we talked about at the beginning, when it's brand new, it takes all of your mental energy. You're not automatic yet. It's a process. And then as you do it more, it becomes more automatic. I did an amazing training with a group of people, and what a learning experience, because I was with 2 people that are so seasoned in trainings and had so many amazing thoughts and ideas. And it was weird because it's like in just an instant, I turned from the person that was doing the training to the person that was learning. And I just gleaned so much, and it needed to take every single bit of my mental and clarity just to be able to take it. And what did I do? I walked away from that thinking, wow, I feel like my learning just expanded so much. I'm glad I put myself in that situation. I'm glad I was training with the people that I were, because then I'm in a state of growth. And I'm like, that area of my life that I've been working towards being trainer, speaker, it doesn't stay stagnant. You keep growing, you keep moving forward. And it feels great. What are you moving forward in your life with? I hope that you're taking strides forward, even on the most relaxing summer day, that you're taking that time to give yourself what you need to expand in your life, because, we're lifetime learners. That's what life is all about in many ways. So time for me to get going. And until next time, live solution focused. Bye-bye.